Shalom everyone. Today we study Parashat Shoftim, and as usual, Parashat Shoftim coincide with the new moon of Virgo, Elul. Today it's even on the same day. So today also Rosh Chodesh Elul. שופטים ושוטרים תיתן לך בכל שעריך. Deuteronomy, ספר דברים, chapter 16, verse 18. The simple translation, judges and policemen, you should give in all your gates. Uh, and then the verse ends, ושפטו את העם משפט צדק, and they will judge the people justice. Now translating the Hebrew into English is impossible over here, but we can somehow get the basic idea. So on the superficial level, he speaks about having a justice, and we know when there is justice, which means the police system is functioning, when the justice system is functioning, you have an environment that allows basically freedom, the freedom to, because you can really be creative. Whatever you create is your
Poor
property.
dog is waiting there.
So, as I said, basically, when the system is a system of justice, it allows prosperity. Uh, Prosperity is based on freedom, freedom of business, and especially the idea, the main biblical idea that every human being is entitled to be happy, and that means that he is supposed to be protected by society from any kind of violence, could be like verbal, could be physical, could be also any kind of a way that somebody takes what belongs to you, either your property, either your belongings, either your free speech, your freedom of opinion, all of that stuff, and a lot of that is in this parasha. That's a superficial level. This is the pshat. Okay, this is very important because no human society cannot function for long without that basic idea of justice. Because the moment you feel that there's no justice, which means some people they have more worth than yourself, it's the beginning of the end because you don't have any incentive to um, to support the community, to support the city, the government, the state, and that's very simple because every society is like a bank, which means if everybody respects the bank, trusts the bank, so everybody puts their money in the bank, and when you need a loan, you take a loan from the bank and you make sure you pay it back. And that moment, the bank has the ability to support all kind of risky endeavors like investments, whatever. There's money to expand, to take risk. But the moment you don't trust the bank, so you pull your money out of the bank, then there's nothing. The bank cannot support anything. The bank goes bankrupt. And when you need some money for, because life, the moment you're running a business, it's not always that you're making money. Sometimes the market is changing and you need some loans in order to either invest, either to expand, or to withstand some some low that part of economy that comes always like in waves, and you need the bank to help you, to support you so you don't collapse. But if there's no trust, uh, then when there are troubles, you can't go around the edges. The edges are very sharp and you're being cut. And this kind of an economy, kind of society is not really viable. Okay, so that's very, very important. And even if we read those eternal words, verse 20, tzedek, tzedek tirdof, למען תחיה, justice, justice you should pursue, so you will live. וירשת את הארץ. And then if there's no justice, you cannot really have a rulership over the land. So everything is connected. And basically, we're coming back to the main idea of the secret of a successful society. When I said many, many times, we are right now experiencing a kind of a different World War III, which means the whole world order is being realigned, recreated. People's trust in the government is falling apart, and therefore their sense of security is also falling apart because there's no justice. Because, as Professor Daniel Kahneman uh, showed in his research, that when judges go to court and they cannot judge uh, evenly, which means they are not able to overcome the prejudgment, which means you're being affected by the nationality, religion of the people standing in front of you. You're being affected by other stuff that is happening around you, nothing to do with the people in court. And you are not and so people go to court, and it's like idol worshiping. You have no idea what's going to be the sentence. Like you take dozens and dozens of cases of the same exact issue, okay, in with different judges and different days, you get a totally different verdict. And which means you go to court and you're saying, if you know the identity of the judge, you would know what's going to be the judgment. At that moment, there's no justice anymore. This disease is all over the world. Why? Uh, People are people, and the judges are human. And another thing is, as the Talmud is saying, when the judge is taking his seat, he has to imagine that he's sitting, that his chair is seated, standing, just at the opening of purgatory. And any moment, you can just say one word and you fall in. Therefore, because people do not have anymore what we call awe of heaven, people are not aware of the power of the Creator in their lives. Therefore, they allow themselves to become gods on their own. The moment, as we say, power corrupts. And absolute power corrupts absolutely, which means in systems in which judges are above everything, there's nobody who can fire them. No one can take them to court for basically making judgment that is not legal. And that means that the power that is being given to these kind of judges, and you see the disease all over the world right now, and the disease is getting worse day by day. Power. Power corrupts and people are weak. If you're not really aware, there is a judge above you, okay? You can go to extremes that human imagination they have not experienced yet, and that's happening all over the world. That's the superficial aspect. However, what is the connection to what we are talking about when we talk about the spiritual dimension, which is the month of Elul? And the month of Elul, we are celebrating today that within 30 days, we are celebrating the new year, Rosh Hashanah, and within 40 days, it is Yom Kippur. So we have from now, from today, for 40 years, for 40 days, we have a war. We are in a fight, fighting for our existence, which means whatever we're going to do in the coming 40 days is going to determine what kind of a year are we going to experience in the coming year. Okay, so of course we can read the parasha and read all those rules of not just religious but community rules, which basically are telling each one of us to take responsibility for our behavior in the coming year, in the previous year, uh, which means whatever you messed up by not following the laws of justice and honesty and integrity, you're probably going to pay the consequences in the coming year. So we saw a lot of great sages in the last 1,000 years, especially starting with the Nachmanides, and we're going to mention that many, many times. Nachmanides, we're talking about most of his life he spent in what is today Catalonia, in Girona, the city of Girona, in Catalonia, northeast of Spain, until he ran away because the church was after him and he had to flee to North Africa and from there to Israel. We are talking about the 13th century. The Nachmanides is basically the founder of the new era in Kabbalistic study. Uh, just the new era, not the new. The new era uh, was 250 years later with the golden era of Tzfat, also in Israel. Also most established mostly with sages who ran away from Spain. Now, Nachmanides is saying, it says that on Rosh Hashanah, every human being is being written who's to live, who's to die. Still, this is hanging till Yom Kippur. And meanwhile, it says every year we go back at the end of the year, and we see during these years we saw a lot of righteous people that died and wicked people, evil people that are still alive. So what about that saying that on Rosh Hashanah the everybody is being written down, like the bad people are written down for death, and the good people are written down for life, and the ones in the middle they are being hanging there till Yom Kippur. And the answer is that the Nachmanides is basically saying, logically, this is impossible. So what you're talking about? You're talking about living physical life, having physical sustenance, or are we talking about the quality of life and the quality of sustenance? Which means we discussed this last week when we spoke about sight, the ability to see. And we said that basically what the sages are saying, see, here are the curse and the blessing, that when you listen, which means when you have an awareness of the spiritual dimensions of life and reality, you basically are alive, which means it doesn't mean you are in heaven, but you are alive. When you fall, you know that you fell and you know why, and you are fighting to get back on your feet because you realize that you are in command over your life. And the most important uh, detail is your connection to the Creator, to the tree of life, to the network of life and spirituality. If you have that connection, and of course, we're humans, we make mistakes. So sometimes it is weak, sometimes it's stronger, but you know it's under your command. You know that when you really want to get stronger connection to the tree of life, so what do you do? Through prayer, study, reading the Zohar, studying, reading Psalms, every other, whatever. There's so many today, so many texts, there's so much wisdom, when you really apply yourself to it and you really invest in it, you know how to strengthen your connection with the tree of life. And that means you know how to uh, l- raise the vitality of your everyday life, your level of pleasure from everything, the level of contentment, the level of security. All of that depends on your own judgment and control. That means that you have a year that you are alive. Alive doesn't mean that everything is great and rosy and it's like eating rosy pudding all day and every day. No, that's not life. Being alive means that you feel that even when you fall, you know how to get up. While when you don't take responsibility and then you fall and your connection to the tree of life is severed, and you instead of taking responsibility, you're busy blaming everyone, the good and the evil. You're just blaming. You're just a loser. And losers, what can we do? They do not take responsibility. They simply blame. They blame the other person. They blame society. They blame injustice. They blame whatever they blame God, even if they blame him by denying his existence or blaming him by straight blame and shame. It doesn't matter. This is not being alive. This is a year of like slow, painful death. Sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's slower. So, how do we, and that's what the question is about for us, because if we are talking about the Kabbalistic meaning of Parashat Shoftim, we want to learn how to live. And here comes the Zohar commentary. When the Zohar is saying about Shoftim and Shotrim, the Zohar adds a verse from Psalms 75, Ki Elohim Shofet, because God is the judge. That's the simplistic translation. However, the Zohar is saying the word ki is a mathematical hint. If you get it for the letter mem, mem is 40, number 40, and after that Elohim shofet ze yashpil ve yarim. And what does it mean? That he's saying that the Zohar is saying that what is the secret of real mishpat? Again, I'm trying to avoid to use the word judgment because mishpat does not equal judgment. Judgment in Hebrew is din, and din means delay. Okay? Mishpat means balancing the judgment, which means the purpose of the shofet, judge in English, is to balance the judgment of the people that are standing in front of him, to bring them into compromise, to bring justice forth, and to make sure that people's lives that went off course are right now back on course. That's this is why mishpat means balance. When we're speaking about also the next month, a month from now, Libra, what's the symbol? The scales, which is called Moznei Mishpat. Libra, the Moznaim, the scales of Mishpat. Again, balancing. To balance, this is the story in the next 40 days. Even more till the end of the holiday high seasons, the high holiday season, which means till Simchat Torah, it's all about balancing. And as I is saying, there are three columns in everything, in every human being. When we forget to balance the three columns and we forget to unite them into one column that is a synthesis of all three, Then we have a problem. אשר קו הימין נוטה לחסד ושופט העולם בחסד. The right column is having is taking to the right, which means loving kindness, forgiveness, and so on. קו שמאל, the left column, נוטה לדינים, goes to the judgment, and he judges the world with judgment. And the central column is the one who unites them both into a third force that is a synthesis. ומקיים מעט שלהם. And what the third power, the central column, is doing, he is allowing both the right and the left, the chesed, loving kindness, and gvura, judgment, to coexist and to complete each other, to support each other. How would that happen? When the central column is, on one hand, takes the left column, its light, and somehow subdues it into minimum, while he raises the right column, which is loving kindness, to shine from above to below, which means basically what happens is that a central column, which is a synthesis, is when you give you give in more power and certainty, and when you take, you make sure to somehow have control over how much do you take and how do you do that with the central column is basically you make sure that when you take, you make sure that others enjoy it too, which means I'm willing to take money from people that I gave them service. Therefore, there is central column. I gave, I did chesed, I helped somebody else, I raised their value by giving them any kind of a service. However, they pay me for my service with gratitude, which means I'm not being hurt for giving and staying somehow behind empty-handed. No, I know that somebody appreciates my giving and they compensate me. So I'm proud about my giving and I'm proud that the people I gave to, they reciprocated and they appreciated it and they paid me for that. Okay, this is very important. In that case, the giver, the person who gave the service, he is a giver, which means he gave service, it really made a difference in the lives of the people he served. At the same time, he received a compensation. He received an act of an award and an act of appreciation. Okay? Now, the people, so there's a giving and receiving that they complete each other. Now, the people who got the service, they on one hand, they get service that really improves their lives. At the same time, they pay for it with happiness and appreciation to improve the lives of their giver. Okay? So you see that both sides are happy, both sides have learned to create this kind of synthesis that when I give, I make sure that people really get, and therefore they compensate me. So when I give, I don't have to be afraid of, I'm right now doing my best effort in order to save somebody's whatever. Okay, his house, his car, his family, his health. I'm giving all my best, but I know that I don't have to be worried about my bills because he's paying for it. Okay, so I can be free to be there giving my best to him. Same thing, the person who gets the support, he knows that because he compensates that person that is helping him, he can be sure that he's going to get the best service. So you realize that when you give, you get, when you get, you give, and you realize these that these have to be in balance. Why? The moment I'm not in balance, which means somebody gave you a service, let's say fixing your sink, and the service is a worth of, let's say, $100. But he requested $1,000 for his request. When you realize that he basically cheated you, and you go to court and you sue him for asking for $1,000 instead of $100, of course that you are now, something went off track. You're not happy, although your sink is working. Okay, the guy that fixed your sink, he walks away with $900 more that people in his profession walk away with, which means that's a theft. This is kind of a scam. Okay, now the police and the judicial system will fix it and force the person that took too much money to give back most of it. So there's not going to be an issue of dishonesty. Okay, so when we realize when is it honest and just in our idea of justice and balance and what is normal, is when there's basic fairness, and that's part of the Torah. But in order to have fairness, you need to have a synthesis between giving and taking, between the person who gives a service but receives a salary and the person who gets a service and he pays the salary. In both cases, it looks like that's a fair game. But in the spiritual realm, we have to realize, as we spoke about it maybe last week, Parashat is about the ability to see. When we are talking about honesty and integrity, we have to understand that everything in life is about spiritual energy. When people interact with each other, it doesn't matter what base, they also replace spiritual energy. The less spiritual you are, and the more materialistic you are, there's less spiritual energy being transferred. And that means that your hunger is not satiated. And that's why you have to make more and more money because everything is nonsense for you because it doesn't get you high anymore. Okay? What we have to understand is that, yes, we need to be aware of the world beyond, the dimension beyond. That dimension beyond is in every coin that you're trading with. That's in every food that you can buy with these coins, every drink you can drink, you can buy with these coins. But you have to understand if there's, as long as there's no synthesis between the physical and the spiritual, between what our senses can perceive and what is the superpower, what are the superpowers we are dealing with, of course, it's going to be really, really tough to run a life that you can say this is a life. So therefore, we have during Parashat Shoftim, the Zohar is giving us so many tools of how do I create a more spiritual life? How do I inject the spiritual agenda, spiritual vision in everything I do? And we can read it in different ways, therefore. But the first thing is the idea that we start here to go deep into it and we come to the peak on Rosh Hashanah. Because how do you balance? Which means people go off balance either when they use just the left column, with the left column, which means I'm here to take. I'm here to take. I'm not here to give anything. I'm here to take. That's called a thief. That's called a cheat and a liar. Okay? The moment you come just to take, okay, why should we give you? Okay? Give us a reason. Hey, if you have nothing to give, leave us alone. Go and die. somewhere in the wilderness. Leave us alone. Anyway, you don't want to interact with the society. But when you really want to live and to connect to the tree of life system, the network of the tree of life, you have to accept the commitment that I'm not here to give. I'm here to give in order to receive. I'm here, I'm receiving God's light as an idea, as a vision, as a goal, because I need that light so I can spread it and I can touch many people as possible with my profession. Could be a plumber, could be a shoemaker, I could be a great chef, I could be, it doesn't matter. The moment we have that idea that we represent the creator in this world, just when we take upon ourselves that mission, in order to show people that there's another way. That the materialistic way is basically an empty, dry well. Nothing is going to bring it any moisture, not in the near future. So, so when we understand that if I want to create balance in my life, I have to create the balance between the will, the desire, the drive to be there for others and to share and save them from their misery of poverty and whatever, or stupidity, which is the same thing, by the way. Or I'm looking within to cleanse myself. Okay. And here, that's what the Zohar is always going into. And it says that mitzvah, after that, the Zohar is saying, so we have in Parashat Shoftim also the ways to execute somebody who got a death sentence. Now we have to understand, the way you read the Torah, it looks like people were executed every day, and the way the Talmud describes uh, the uh, the Supreme Court in Jerusalem, that once in 70 years, if they executed somebody, the whole that was very, very rare. How could it be? It says death. And the Zohar says we are talking about a spiritual journey. And when we are talking about that, we're talking about there are two kinds of death. There's a death that that, as we said, when the person is not really committed for spiritual guidelines. He's committed only to fulfill his immediate desires and cravings. So when you feel like eating, you eat and you enjoy, you care about nothing. When you want, whatever you want to do, you just do it without any commitment for any authority above you, which means you just do whatever you feel like. And then you don't understand why you feel so much depressed. And that we said the answer is when you don't have a commitment to the network of the laws of the universe that the Torah is describing, which means an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. That's what this parasha is saying. Or in other words, what comes around goes around, which means it's only us through our behavior that we can pull over ourselves the angel of death or the tree of life. It is totally our choice, and we need to take the responsibility. Okay? There's no other way to get out of this amazing journey without taking responsibility. But what the Zoe is saying, we'll take it deeply into the human heart. And he's saying that the mitzvot after that, there is a mitzvah of how to kill by sword, how to execute, the criminal by sword. also by strangulation or by stoning or by fire. And what does it mean in the spiritual dimension? We are here to kill our own selfish desire. And we have that selfish desire because when God created the universe, when the Creator created the universe, He could not give but all of Himself because the giving had to be unconditional and infinite. So the result was that He gave us everything, including Himself. And that's why the image of God, as it says in Genesis chapter 1, had been imprinted in each one of us. And because of that, we cannot tolerate getting without giving. We cannot tolerate being in control without achieving that control on our own. We cannot tolerate free gifts. So we need to build our own connection to the tree of life, independently from what other people do or what other people think. I need to share with other people. So by sharing with other people, I create that power that balances my left side, my egotistic side. So I'm not really doing a favor to anybody. And that's what people have to realize. When I help them, I'm doing a favor to myself because when I give with passion, with power, with awareness, I am creating the power that can overcome and balance the judgment within me, the selfish desires within me, that I cannot avoid them, but I can harness them with the desire to give. When I do that and I create the synthesis, I'm receiving and giving every moment altogether. I can never be drained. And that's the central column. However, that's not enough. I have to fight obstacles. And these obstacles, they have many faces, at least four. And that's why the Zohar says in verse number 2 in the Zohar of Parashat Shoftim, המצווה שלך זו הוא לדון בדין חרב. The next mitzvah is to judge, execute somebody with a sword. לדון בחנק, to judge and execute uh, with the strangulation. לדון בדין סקילה, with stoning. דין שרפה, with fire. Who are we judging over here? The dark force of the creation. That dark force has its own purpose, which means it is there to scare us, to humiliate us, to hurt us. So it is there to scare us so we can achieve enough certainty that everything is for the good, so we're not scared anymore. We're not getting startled anymore. And also for all of these judgments are there to give us the ability to go and fight our own true internal enemies. Those enemies who make the noise, as Kahneman is talking about, that I cannot really tell the difference between the real, authentic me and the noise that comes from conditioning that comes from the surrounding society. So when it says to judge somebody with a sword, with strangulation, with stoning, with fire, we are talking about it's about the methods of war against our dark Lord, which means the dark side of our personality. That dark side is totally dedicated for that war. As it says, כי רבתה בשמיים חרבי, הנה לדום תרד. No, it's not here. As it says, because when the sword, my sword, is totally full with blood in the heaven, and it's going to come down over Edom. We are talking about symbolic forces, which means who is Edom? Edom is the materialistic society in the West, okay, which is all about, and it has like branches all over the world. Okay, there are a lot of people, let's say, in the exotic countries like, let's say, China, uh, um, uh, Vietnam, maybe in Thailand. I'm just Far East. They're far away from let's say, where the Judeo-Christian culture is being created. Okay, but you still see the the methods of the Western materialism. That religion is everywhere, everywhere. Okay, now how do you fight it? So you need to execute those part of your own personality that pull you towards that direction. It's an ongoing, daily, hourly, many times every minute, to fight the dark side. So how do you fight it? We explained it in previous years, but he's speaking about stoning. And he says, that Zohar explained, the spiritual aspect of stoning is when a bad thought is coming, and instead of flowing with it, you just throw, like with a catapult, like a stone in a catapult, you throw your thoughts high to the above, and you connect to divinity. And when you do that, it's like you stoned that messenger of materialism, because you're not listening and you're not evaluating it as it used to be, just a materialistic issue. No, there's always a spiritual dimension to every decision. So when stoning the evil inclination is when the moment you feel the attack, you send your thought high above to the source of all life, okay, the tree of life. When you do that and you connect to it, not just that you raise all the fighting, arguing armies in your body, but you can overtower, like the evil inclination. It can stone him from above because he's exposed to you, and you are blessed to be able to see the marks that is behind him. So you can warn others and be prepared uh, be able to pass that. And then he's speaking about, so we had that stoning, we had dying by sword, and how do you die by sword? If you take the Youdkevitch, the tetragrammaton, if you can imagine the Yud as the handle of the sword, the Hey is the seat of that handle, and then the Vav is the body of the sword, and then the two-edged swords. These are the two Heys. So when you really use that as a meditation, and when you feel the conflict, when you feel the hatred, when you feel the frustration, when you feel the injustice, when you feel any kind of negative warfare, you basically, as I said, I spoke more about it in about the technique over Parashat Re'eh, last week's parasha, and I said it's like the simplest thing is like a stop sign. You come to an immediate stop without any arguments, without making it too sophisticated. You bring it to stop. How you just impose that stop over yourself. Don't think about it this way. Okay? So what do you do now? Then you connect back to the creator. So it's not about what I want to do and receive, it's what the creator wants to do and make me receive for everybody and for himself. So this is what happens when we find ourselves facing injustice, anger, upset, whatever. That humans are very good at uh, making other people upset and disillusioned and loss of control, loss of hope. All of that is happening because that's what people do. The question is, do we take our reaction and make a synthesis? And instead of allowing the reaction to become worse and worse and worse, it associates itself knowingly to the dark side, and then we're finished. Or do I really wage a war? And that's what we're talking about. And the war, you need a sword. And the handle of the sword is the hay. And the seat of the sword is the is I'm so the handle is the yud. The seat is the hay. And now the body of the sword is the vav. The two edges are the two hays. You have Youdkevitch. You have the tetragrammaton, which means you know immediately how to get into the core of authenticity and trinity. And how that synthesis can happen, and the Zohar explains. We know that the head of the sword, the Yud, is what's called Chokhmah, the light of wisdom, which is the infinite light of life that is washing all reality all the time. However, the light that is being revealed through, let's say, the prayer of Shema Israel, okay, the Zohar says, is so powerful that it destroys all enemies of the light. Which means when a person is really focused on his prayers and meditations, he can create so much light, and the light removes the darkness. So the Zohar is giving a lot of information about how do you, on one hand, use all the methods of killing to fight your own dark side. And the meditation that the Yud is the head, as we said, the head of the sword. Uh, the two hays are the two edges of the sword, and the Vav is the central column, which balances the two, and it's also the pipe for flow. And now the Zohar continues with different ways of killing, what's the spiritual aspect of each one of them. Uh, Especially the nicest is verse 8 in the Zohar Sulam of Parashat Shoftim, לדון בשרפה לסמך מם. We have to judge the dark side by fire, to death by fire. How are we going to do that? על ידי עצים להדליק בהם אש. We need wood in order to light it up with fire so that can ignite the whole thing. אשריהו הגוף שהוא עץ. Praiseworthy is the body that is all wood. והאיברים שלו הם עצים, and praise God for those people that they are also the children of people like this. So all the different organs, all the members of the family are like the wood that the fire can consume. And how does that happen? Especially, it's like when we light Shabbat candles. Okay, when a woman lights Shabbat candles, or the no woman in the house, the man has to light the Shabbat candle, but with the idea that you to burn the dark side, to burn negativity, to burn despair, to burn victimization, to burn blame and shame, all what is really uh, the antidote of all what Shabbat is about and what happiness is about. And then he says, as Zohar says, verse 8 in the Sulam, Ashreu haguf shu etz. Praiseworthy is the body that is a tree, wood. V'avarim shalem etzim. And the different parts of him are also wood. She served by mesh, if a wood for fire. So what does it mean? When a person realizes that that we can basically, and we're supposed to be like though that wood to burn the dark side on the altar. The same thing when we get excited about spirituality, about our connection to the Creator, about our meditations, when we really give it power and so on, that diminishes the power from them. Therefore, big powers in the material world become very small ones, 10 years, 20 years later, because they simply did not function as the rule is asking, which means you're selling in order to make money. You don't sell it because you have a mission to improve people's lives. Okay? And if you have that mission, you don't just sell everything, you sell only what can improve people's lives, not hoaxes. So when a person is regarding himself as the wood of the tree of life, that means you do everything with excitement, you go on fire of happiness, excitement, and zeal, and you're really committed to it, then the more you do, the more you get. The more you do, the more you get closer to the tree of life, to the Creator. The more experiences of being present with the Creator you feel, either strong and sometimes just in a little corner, sometimes more, but it's getting stronger and stronger and stronger until you don't need any external. That applies to that applies for burning by wood, because just simply taking a commitment and applying to it and fighting for it while doing everything else as a mission to become godly. So yes, I'm a farmer. Why not? Farmers cannot become godly. How many prophets were farmers? And with the excitement of the fire that is lit on their altar, in a case in which people really commit themselves for the spiritual journey, especially in the coming 40 years, till Yom Kippur, from Rosh Chodesh Elul till Yom Kippur, then what it says, Va'azar hakarev yumat, and the stranger is coming too close will be executed. Which means when we use again Va'eshel HaMizbech to cut bo, and the fire will be burning over the altar, then when we feel that we are the wood and our excitement is about improving, growing, is the fire that is holding onto the wood, you basically bring offerings in the temple. However, there's a deeper meaning to that. And of course, this is about preparing us for Rosh Hashanah. And the Zohar continues, I continue the explanation of verse 10. כבר ידעת שזון מצד אצילותם אינם רואים למוחים. You should know that if we're talking about the tree of life, then the last two sefirot, Ze'er and Nukba, they are not qualified to receive the power and the light of high. Okay? However, they were created to receive that power. So our job is to connect by correcting ourselves so we can raise ourselves and be worthy and capable of receiving the intense light of the creation. So, in order for us to be able to receive that light, the Creator raised Malchut to Binah, and Malchut became one with Binah. That's part of the long process of evolution that the Kabbalists speak about for thousands of years. So, so when the Zeranpin and Malchut, which are what we experience as our vessel to receive the light, our desires and needs and intentions, whatever, when they are starting to understand that you cannot really have life without the tree of life, you have to realize what are the rules for that. First of all, you have to be honest, says the Zohar. The other thing is you have to create that synthesis, as we said before. And that synthesis is about creating the desire to receive for the sake of giving. Now, however, to kill the dark side and to draw the life for the upper worlds and to Zeranpi Malchut, אי אפשר עד שימיתו אותו, you have to kill him by four different ways of killing, which are סקילה, שרפה, הרג וחנק, stoning, burning with fire, killing, and strangling. Before you apply all those four over your own private, inner, dark side, you're not alive. You're not really alive. For that, you need a commitment. For that, you need a technique, a measurement. כי כל זמן שעשית רחת דבוק שם, אין לחשוב אפילו מבחינת תיקון. As long as the dark side is holding on to your thoughts, to your heart, there's nothing to talk about. Every little thing that comes in, he consumes it. As long as the dark side is connected, involved, and taking control, there's no way to make a tikkun, to bring to completion. So how do you solve the problem? So for that, the Zohar says you have to put a landmine. He will step on it, and the result of the blow will be that Malchut will rise and come up, ascend up to Binah. And when Malchut is getting there, how does it get there? When we transform our natural selfish thinking into an altruistic thinking about how do we create a better surrounding. When I focus, this is judgment. When I focus just about my materialistic needs, I want that, and who cares about anything else? That's called an addiction. Okay? That's called judgment. Why? You take only for yourself, you take, you take, you take. Finally, that will blow in your face. The tree of life system will blow it into yourself, into your face. So so when you apply the other way of commitment for giving, for being there for others, and so on, you create a new vessel. This vessel is wired differently. Now, this vessel, it's connecting to the upper three, to the source of all light, and now it flows in. There's no judgment. The vessel is ready. So how do we ascend to Binah? How do we, being thrown like the stone up to the right place. And that's called, first of all, devotion. That's called commitment to be there for others. And this is called also stoning because when we throw our thoughts, our focal point for thinking from, what kind of a cookie should I eat right now? Maybe a cake, maybe ice cream, maybe a steak. Just being totally surrounded with materialism. But then when you devote yourself for a higher cause, for a higher energy, and you're willing and you're simply offering your own self by that devotion to be there for somebody else, to put everything you've got into making everything grow. When you do that, that's a different game. You're connecting right now to the tree of life. However, the real connection happens when you really are willing to do that, just because that's the only way to serve the Creator. When you have that like commitment that is totally independent, when you have that focal point that is totally about enlightenment, why do people, especially young people today, they go into cultish movements? Because you have that dire need to commit to something greater than life. So instead of being a useful idiot and being a pawn in schemes of greater powers that you don't even understand what you're doing, basically be in that place of spiritual commitment and devotion for whatever is good. How do you know? You see that it's the more you do it, the more loving, humble, and peaceful you become. You know that you're really transforming. So when you make that process in the coming 40 days and you get closer to the Creator, this is really important because you are becoming to that person that is the real, truthful, authentic yourself. When you come to Rosh Hashanah and now you're there praying, meditating on simply being part of the mission, God's mission to make the world a better place, God's mission that we take responsibility to bring God's creatures closer to Him. When that is your prayer and your focal point is not that you're coming to Rosh Hashanah and you, God, I need panas, I need money, I need to get married, and you're not coming with a shopping list. You're coming with, I'm joining you, God, with the mission to make the whole world aware of you. That's what Rosh Hashanah is really about. And then when you realize the name of the 10 days before between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the real name is the 10 days of awe. Because when you are part in that mission to instill awe in humans, the awe of God, then all of us will become much, much better. If you read the prayers of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the prayers are not, oh God, give me life, give me children, give me money. No, the prayer is about, oh God, may your awe and fear and awareness dwell all over all of humanity. You know why? Because when the judges everywhere, when the policemen everywhere, when the people who give you, when the government officers, when the entrepreneurs, when everybody has the awe of God, we'll have a real free society finally, with justice, with creativity, with freedom of speech and freedom of of creativity, trade, everything. And when you have this kind of society and you understand that everybody is messengers of the Almighty, of course, that you create a new kind of a civilization that is going to be richer, more powerful, more happy, more in every mean. And that's what these 40 days are about. Good luck to us all, especially nowadays. That we're already in the midst, we passed the middle of this decade of the 780 of in the sixth millennium. And now the world transformation is getting more and more intense by the day. That people start to realize that the structures that function somehow before they're fake, they do not function anymore. Why? Because the moment you get God out of the public space, then the bliss comes out from public space also. Good luck to us all and have a great month and a great year for all. Thank you.